Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with King Abdullah of Jordan, calls for an early resolution of the security and humanitarian situation in West Asia. Israel bombards Gaza with more airstrikes. Its soldiers fight the Hamas on the ground in the besieged enclave and the Palestinians in the West Bank. Biden speaks to Netanyahu, also holds talks with Western allies to prevent the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from spreading. A Pakistani court indicts Imran Khan in an Official Secrets Act case, deals another blow to the jailed former Prime Minister ahead of a January election. And legendary Indian cricketer and former captain Bishan Singh Bedi passes away at 77. First up, the latest on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Jordan's King Abdullah II on Monday. They exchanged views on developments in the West Asian region and shared concerns regarding terrorism and loss of civilian lives. The message posted by Prime Minister Modi on X also said that concerted efforts were needed for an early resolution of the security and humanitarian situation. Bombing has intensified in Gaza. Israel claims to have targeted at least 320 locations in the past 24 hours. Hundreds of people have been killed in these Israeli air raids. On the other hand, the Hamas attacks on southern Israel continue. Meanwhile, European Union Foreign Minister Josep Borrell called for a pause in the conflict to let more aid enter Gaza. Raghav Kumar Jha reports.
As the war between Israel-Gaza enters 17th day, the blame game continues. The Israeli military claimed on Monday that in the past 24 hours it had struck at least 320 targets in Gaza, including a tunnel housing Hamas fighters and dozens of command and lookout posts. According to Palestinian health officials, some 400 Palestinians were killed in air attacks on Gaza in the last 24 hours, with 60 killed in overnight attacks. Residents of Khan Yunis in Gaza said it was the hardest night so far the area has witnessed.
We are expelled from Gaza city. They said Khan Yunis is a safe area. Now there is no safe space in all Gaza. The strikes yesterday in Khan Yunis were different than any other night, and thank God we are still here.
IDF and the Israel Security Authority said that it destroyed sites liable to endanger the troops who are preparing on the Gaza periphery for a ground maneuver.
During the night, there were raids by tank and infantry forces. These raids are raids that kill squads of terrorists who are preparing for the next stage in the war. These are raids that go deep to the contact line. These raids also locate and search for anything we can get in terms of intelligence on the missing and the hostages.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convened a meeting with his security officials and war cabinet in Tel Aviv to assess the escalating conflict with the Hamas. He also held a series of conversations with Western leaders over the weekend.
We can't contain the humanitarian catastrophe if the terrorism from Gaza continues this way. There will be no security and no peace, not for Israel and not for Palestinians, if this terrorism persists. We need a path for tomorrow.
On the other hand, Hamas terrorists also continued to attack parts of southern Israel on Monday. A number of rockets were fired from Gaza. Meanwhile, European Union foreign ministers are meeting in Luxembourg to debate on the situation in Israel and in the region. Fears that the Israel-Hamas war could mushroom into a wider Middle East conflict rose over the weekend, with Washington, D.C. warning of a significant risk to U.S. interests in the region and announcing a new deployment of advanced air defenses. Raghav Kumar Jha, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu appreciated Greece's solidarity with Israel. The Greek leader said that his country will continue to support Israel.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Dear Bibi, I come here not just as an ally, but as a true friend. What happened was truly horrible, and Greece from the very first moment defended and supported the right of Israel to defend itself in line with international law, and we drew a very clear distinction between Hamas and the Palestinian people, and we will continue to be able to support you and to hope that whatever happens without too much of a humanitarian cost. But you can count on our support, on our help.
Thank you, friend. Thank you.
Now, 2 aid convoys entered Gaza through the Rafah crossing point bordering Egypt over the weekend. But it is not enough for the thousands of survivors still waiting for more food and water. The next report tells you more.
As the Israel-Hamas conflict rages on, the civilians are bearing the brunt. These young survivors are being pulled out of Rubel by Palestinian medics and were rushed to nearby hospital on Monday following latest air strikes. These are the visuals of southern Israeli town of Sderot. It was a bustling community of about 24,000 residents. But now, it resembles a ghost town after residents evacuated under a government order. The town is one of the closest in proximity to the border with Gaza, where Israel has been engaged in a military campaign against Hamas militants. Sderot has been the target of numerous rocket attacks from Gaza and was also a target of an attack by Palestinian militants on October 7th. Meet Dima Al-Amdani. She and her family were among the hundreds of thousands of Gazans fleeing south to avoid the constant onslaught of the airstrikes. With nowhere else to go, the family settled in a temporary shelter in Khan Yunis with hopes that they had found temporary sanctuary. But overnight on October 17th, a massive aerial bombing from Israeli jets hit the shelter. Al-Abdani, her brother and 2 younger cousins survived the bombing, sustaining some injuries. But her remaining 13 relatives, including her parents, 7 siblings and 4 members of her uncle's family, were not so lucky. The orphaned Al-Amdani, her brother and cousins say they are living in a constant fear of suffering further bombings.
I felt heartbroken. It was like a nightmare. They opened my father's coffin and had no signs of injuries, but he died. I had a 16-year-old sister among the dead, and they wrote my name on her coffin, since they thought it was me. Her body didn't have any signs of injuries, but maybe she died from internal injuries.
Josep Borrell, the European Union foreign policy chief, has called for a pause in the conflict to allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza.
We will discuss also about the call for the United Nations about an humanitarian pause, which is also needed, even for giving back the hostages. The attacks of missiles, rockets from Hamas, from Gaza has to stop. The priority at that moment is to make humanitarian support going into Gaza.
India on Sunday provided medical aid and disaster relief material to Palestine, comprising of vital life-saving medications, surgical equipment, tents, sleeping bags, tarps, water purification tablets, and other essential items. On Sunday evening, an additional 15 aid trucks carrying food, water, and medicine arrived via the Rafah crossing on Gaza's border with Egypt, the only border crossing between the besieged coastal enclave and Egypt that was blocked for the past 2 weeks.
The trucks have all the supplies needed, including food and relief items, including milk for children and medical supplies. We demand the international community take responsibility for the passage of aid. Over 2.4 million people in Gaza are in need of this aid.
And joining me is my colleague Amritpal Singh. Amrit, how do you view Prime Minister Modi's telephone call with King Abdullah of Jordan?
Well, Ramesh, Jordan is an important player in this region. So Prime Minister Modi's a conversation with the King of Jordan, clearly focusing on, he did mention terrorism and violence, but he also mentioned the loss of civilian lives, clearly looking at how this conflict should end, or at least not escalate, because he spoke about the security. The tweet of the Prime Minister says that the two leaders discussed the security situation. So is there a way out, and how it should be, how all parties should work towards seeing that this does not escalate and spiral into a regional conflict with other countries or country-backed non-state actors coming into the conflict, because then it will have a devastating consequence not just for the region but for the wider global community. The world at this time cannot afford another war, and given that the Arab world is the energy hub of the world, it would have a very deep impact on fuel prices. One, that, and secondly, the humanitarian aid, the flow of humanitarian aid that should be continued and perhaps increased, because the requirement of that in the Gaza Strip is way too much than what is being sent in right now.
Indeed. Amrit, what more can you tell us about the Israeli raids on Gaza and West Bank alike?
Israel has, intensified its raids on the Gaza Strip. In fact, last night is said to have been the worst night since this phase of the war started. Today, day 17 is ending, and Israel is openly saying that we have increased our raids there. If you were to believe the Hamas, the health ministry of the Hamas says 400 people were killed in the last 24 hours itself. Now, then there was an interesting development last night when the Israelis tried to get inside the Gaza Strip. The Hamas retaliated, and one Israeli soldier was killed. According to reports, 3 were injured. So I think Hamas is also pretty well prepared that if there is a ground assault, they would retaliate. That would mean that the Israeli side would take casualties as well. And of course, the civilian death count in the Gaza Strip would go up. And I think they would keep bombing, continue with the aerial bombing tonight. It's also to see that when the Hamas is considerably weakened and the time is ripe for going in. Ramesh?
Indeed. And finally, Amrit, Western leaders are making a beeline for Israel. The Dutch and Greek leaders held talks with Netanyahu. President Macron of France lands in Israel on Tuesday. Are these visits at all influencing Israel's plans for a ground assault on Gaza?
Well, that is the objective. All of them, come out and make public statements saying that we support Israel, we've stood by Israel, which they do. But I think behind closed doors, they must be telling Benjamin Netanyahu that, if they go in, this could have devastating consequences for, the people, for the civilians of Gaza, and then it will be difficult for these countries to defend because the numbers, there will be a steep climb in the number of casualties of the civilians, and secondly, the threat of it spiraling or becoming a regional conflict. So they would be pressing that. Is it having an effect? It would have a limited effect because Israel, I think, is very clearly telling them that we will not stop until we achieve the objective of this war, achieve a military objective, which is they publicly say decimate Hamas, but even if they are not able to do it, they surely want to weaken it so much that they can't affect the kind of attacks that they did on the 7th of October. So they want to punish Hamas, and I think they would be telling them, to that extent it will be influencing that they are allowing humanitarian aid to go in. They are right now not going in for a ground assault. So it is to some extent, I would say, influencing Israelis.
Amrit, thank you for your inputs. Much appreciated. And still to come on DD India News Hour. A deep dive into the West Asia situation with an expert who joins us momentarily. The Philippines again asks China to stop its provocative actions in the South China Sea. And a Pakistani court indicts the country's jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan in a leaked documents case.
अब क्या देख रहे हो पापा?
तुम कहते हो ना कि स्टॉक मार्केट में बहुत सोच समझकर इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, बस थोड़ा सा ज्ञान ले रहा हूं।
किससे?
हर एक स्टॉक्स एक्सपर्ट है, मस्त एजुकेशनल वीडियोस बनाता है और अच्छी इन्वेस्टमेंट की टिप्स भी देता है।
पापा, इन वीडियोस पे ना जाएं, अपना रिसर्च खुद करें या सेबी रजिस्टर्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट एडवाइजर से संपर्क करें। एजुकेशन के नाम पर कुछ इन्फ्लुएंसर्स अक्सर इन्वेस्टर को मिसगाइड करते हैं, नुकसान आपका होगा।
सोचकर समझकर इन्वेस्ट कर।
तुम्हें पता है इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए कि इन्वेस्टर प्रोटेक्शन फंड होता है IPF, लेकिन अगर तुम्हारा ट्रेड एक्सचेंज पर एग्जीक्यूट नहीं हुआ या फिर कोई गारंटीड रिटर्न्स वाली स्कीम है तो ये IPF आपकी मदद नहीं कर सकता है।
और अगर आपका ब्रोकर ही डिफॉल्टर बन जाए तो
फिर IPF आपको कॉम्पेंसेशन दिला सकता है।
कहां से सीखा?
NSE की साइट पर।
सोचकर समझकर इन्वेस्ट कर।
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Now, going back to the top story, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Captain Alok Bansal joins us. Captain Bansal is the director of India Foundation, a New Delhi-based think tank. He is a former officer of the Indian Navy. Captain Bansal, welcome once again to DD India News Hour. Now, Israel conducts raids in Gaza and the West Bank, but no word yet on a ground offensive. Is Israel having second thoughts on a ground assault?
See, firstly, we need to understand that ground offensive in a heavily built-up area is going to be very, very expensive and make lives. Already, Netanyahu is under immense pressure for having lost so many lives in that attack. So I think Israel would want to play safe. From the point of view of Hamas would want Israel to continue with such aerial attacks because these aerial attacks create huge collateral damage. And that has been what Hamas's strategy has been. They want to create furor within the Arab streets where people see those scenes, they see that the innocent civilians are being attacked, and that's been their strategy. If we actually look at this whole war, from the time Hamas attacked Israel, they knew that Israel has a huge superiority of weapons, technological superiority, and they are going to be vanquished. But it was a quasi-suicidal attack where they wanted to be thrashed so as to achieve their strategic objectives. And to a very great extent, they have succeeded. They have prevented Arab states which were gravitating towards Israel from going there. They have created a furor amongst Arab masses, but not only in Arab masses, but across the globe. At the same time, they have created immense pressure on other Palestinian groups like Fatah, or for that example, Palestinian Authority, is now under immense pressure because the common masses feel that the people in Gaza or the Hamas has taken some initiative, whereas Palestinian Authority has done nothing.
Right.
So that has actually created. So all the strategic objectives have been achieved. And to that extent, I feel Hamas is already still holding on to the areas which are close to Israel border. And that's probably the reason why Israelis are reluctant to move in, because if in that heavily built areas, if there are still Hamas pockets, they could inflict casualties on Israeli troops, and they would not want that. And from Hamas's point of view, the longer they take, better it is, because that would enrich.
Right.
And at this point of time, both Israel and Hamas want a long conflict, because Hamas wants that longer the conflict, more agitated people will be in other parts of the world. From Israel's point of view, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who would face immense criticism at home as this war ends, would also want that he has taken a hard militaristic view, which probably helps him earn some support as the war continues.
Captain Bansal, you spoke about the Fatah-Hamas dynamic and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. In that context, now, reports suggest that at least 93 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli raids in the West Bank alone. Now, there is no Hamas in West Bank, but Israel still targets it. A mosque in Jenin was targeted. So what does that tell you about the scope of Israel's military actions?
There is no doubt that some of the Israeli actions have been not proportionate. I think carrying out this sort of strikes in West Bank, etc., is expanding the arena of conflict, which is not in Israel's long-term interest. It may be in Prime Minister Netanyahu's short-term interest that more he enhances the arena of conflict, his position remains secure. But certainly it's not in Israel's long-term interest, because for Israel it is essential that there is a moderate Arab leadership which acts as a safety valve and prevents that Arab anger into spilling into violence. But with this sort of an act, what he will do is that he'll make Palestinian Authority look suspect in the eyes of the residents of West Bank. And already, I think Fatah is losing legitimacy. So if there is a free and fair elections probably today in Palestinian areas, you may say Fatah losing to outfits like Hamas. And that could be even more problematic for Israel in the long run. And I think that Israel needs to take cognizance of.
Captain Bansal, if I were to ask you to zoom out and look at the neighborhood as a whole, now Israel is keeping up its attacks against the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel has also targeted Syria, but neither Syria nor Lebanon have retaliated. Also, Iran does not appear to want to oblige Israel by directly getting involved in the conflict. So is Tehran playing the waiting game here?
Yeah, I think Iran's direct involvement in the conflict is, I think, an overhyped report that's been done. There is no doubt that Iran has very close relations with Hezbollah and has been supporting Hamas in the past. But Iran's proxies, both Hezbollah as well as even Houthis from Yemen, have taken some steps to indicate that they have. Because at this stage, all these outfits have to take notional actions to keep their fighters and their support base intact. Because if they are seen as important in the face of Israeli aggression, they would probably lose support. So that is where it is happening. But as far as you're saying no retaliation from Syria or Lebanon, we need to understand that Syria is still, the conflict is still not over.
Right.
So Indian government would not like to open a new front as far as Syria is concerned. And Syria's getting involved into the conflict could fracture the larger Arab unity that is emerging in the face of this particular conflict. And Lebanon, as it is a fractured government. So if Hezbollah is a very major component, and I think if Hezbollah is doing something, Lebanon as a whole or Lebanon government, I think would like to remain quiet at this moment. And that is where I think Jordan is a very crucial country, because that's one of the countries which has relations with Israel, is fairly that is the country which has borders with West Bank, and that would have a very important role to play. And I think that's why Prime Minister Modi has spoken to Jordanian King, I think, trying to work out a system by which mediation or some sort of a ceasefire can be brought about. Because the fact is that it is not in the interest of the world, not in India's interest, that this conflict continues unabated.
Absolutely. Captain Bansal, you spoke about Arab unity, and that gives me a perfect segue to my next question to you. The Cairo Summit for Peace failed to deliver a joint statement. What does that tell you about Arab unity or the prevailing sentiment insofar as the Palestinians is concerned?
See, the fact is that there are some of the Arab states which have relations with Israel. Some of them are extremely beholden to the United States. The Cairo summit was stymied by the absence of a high-level U.S. presence in that particular summit. And I think that has its own impact. I think Arab world is still, though they all oppose at this moment Israeli aggression in Gaza, but what should be the next step, they are, I think, still divided on that. But that is where I think Hamas wants that this conflict should continue, because the longer this conflict continues, I think the differences are likely to get bridged. And that is an important facet which we'll have to probably look into it, because the longer this conflict continues, it would force Arab regimes to come to a strident anti-Israel stance. And I think that is what Hamas wants. And I think that's why at some stage, the Western world should try and stop this conflict. And I think we should try and ensure that least collateral damage takes place. I think the hapless Arabs and hapless citizens of Israel are not afflicted by this war. Because at some stage, I feel when the ground offensive starts, Hamas would again start firing rockets into Israel, causing random casualties. And I think that's a very, very sad part, where innocent civilian lives are lost, as they were lost in the initial attacks. I think that's a very, very sad position. But a non-state actor, terrorist outfit, can be expected to do. But at the same time, at this point of time, I think the Israeli reaction is also causing huge collateral damage. The way the bombs have been dropped in the vicinity of the hospital gives greater credence to the fact that the earlier bombing of the hospital was probably by the Israeli Defense Forces, and I think that would create greater problems for Israel in days to come. Militarily, Israel has a far superior status, but the point is, when faced with an asymmetric warfare, this sort of non-state actor could indulge in any act. There are some that they could use some low-grade chemical weapons or things like that, which is quite feasible at this stage, and we need to be careful.
Right. Captain Bansal, I have just about enough time to ask you one last question on this broadcast. The Biden G7 allies, Western allies of the US, the joint statement talks about a durable peace. Is a two-state solution back in play?
I feel, this is my personal opinion, that after this attack, a two-state solution is feasible. Because what had happened was that for quite some time after Camp David, etc., the Israel felt that they were under no compulsion to accommodate Arab demands. And I think when a feeling like that comes in, I think a credible two-state solution was not coming up. I think now I feel Israel maybe, once the conflict ends, not now, but after the conflict ends, Israel may be willing to have a far more credible two-state solution.
Captain Bansal, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India cricketing legend Bishan Singh Bedi passes away. Russia and Ukraine hit each other's military targets. And the chief of UN nuclear watchdog calls on Indian Prime Minister, praises New Delhi's record as a responsible nuclear power.
अब क्या देख रहे हो पापा? तुम कहते हो ना कि स्टॉक मार्केट में बहुत सोच समझकर इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए। बस थोड़ा सा ज्ञान ले रहा हूँ। किससे? हर एक स्टॉक्स एक्सपर्ट है, मस्त एजुकेशनल वीडियोस बनाता है और अच्छी इन्वेस्टमेंट की टिप्स भी देता है।
पापा इन वीडियोस पे ना जाएं, अपना रिसर्च खुद करें या सेबी रजिस्टर्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट एडवाइजर से संपर्क करें। एजुकेशन के नाम पर कुछ इन्फ्लुएंसर्स अक्सर इन्वेस्टर को मिसगाइड करते हैं, नुकसान आपका होगा।
सोचकर समझकर इन्वेस्ट कर।
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
तुम्हें पता है इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए कि इन्वेस्टर प्रोटेक्शन फंड होता है IPF, लेकिन अगर तुम्हारा ट्रेड एक्सचेंज पर एग्जीक्यूट नहीं हुआ या फिर कोई गारंटीड रिटर्न्स वाली स्कीम है तो ये IPF आपकी मदद नहीं कर सकता है।
और अगर आपका ब्रोकर ही डिफॉल्टर बन जाए तो
फिर IPF आपको कॉम्पेंसेशन दिला सकता है।
कहाँ से सीखा?
NSE की साइट पर।
सोचकर समझकर इन्वेस्ट कर।
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with King Abdullah of Jordan, calls for an early resolution of the security and humanitarian situation in West Asia. Biden speaks to Netanyahu, also holds talks with Western allies to prevent the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from spreading. And legendary Indian cricketer and former captain Bishan Singh Bedi dies at 77. The Philippines has again called on China to stop its provocative actions in the South China Sea after Sunday's collision at sea. Beijing and Manila have blamed each other for the incident. More in the next report.
Tensions have flared in the region after two separate collisions between Philippine and Chinese vessels took place on a recent Sunday. Philippines repeated its call for stopping provocation from Chinese side.
The matter about filing another case is something that's still being studied by the government. But of course, all incidents like this will actually bolster the case that it's not the Philippines that's the aggressor, but the other party, which is China, that's actually undertaking dangerous maneuvers and blockades and putting at risk not only vessels, but more importantly, the people who are manning the vessels.
In the aftermath of these incidents, both Beijing and Manila pointed fingers at each other. The Philippines has summoned the Chinese ambassador and filed a diplomatic protest, while China's embassy in Manila has lodged a complaint of its own.
As we have repeatedly said in the past, continued Chinese blocking and interference by Chinese vessels with our regular and routine rotation and resupply missions RORE to BRP Sierra Madre may lead to disastrous results. While no lives were lost in the collisions yesterday, China's provocative and irresponsible actions have clearly impeded once again the safety of the Filipino crew.
China once again urges the Philippines to take China's Solomon concern seriously. honor its commitment and stop creating tensions at sea, stop taking dangerous actions, stop attacking the seamen in China, and tow down the naval vessels illegally grounded as soon as possible, so as to avoid undermining peace and stability in the South China Sea.
On the international stage, the White House has come out in support of the Philippines, accusing the Chinese Coast Guard of violating international law by intentionally interfering with the Philippine vessels. Meanwhile, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has ordered an investigation into Sunday's collision. China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia and Brunei claim the Spratly Islands and its surrounding waters, with China, Taiwan and Vietnam laying claims to all of the Paracel Islands in the north of the South China Sea.
In a first, South Korea on Sunday conducted a joint aerial exercise with Japan and the US. The drill aimed to expand the country's response to capabilities against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. The countries also agreed to carry out annual multi-domain trilateral exercises and set up a hotline for crisis communications. The US and South Korea completed a joint anti-submarine exercise held from 6th to 22nd October near the naval base in Guam. To South Asia now, a Pakistani court indicted former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his deputy in an Official Secrets Act case on Monday. A case was filed against Imran Khan for allegedly violating the Official Secrets Act by disclosing a secret diplomatic cable sent by the Pakistani embassy in the US in March 2022. This cipher was then used by Khan to build a narrative that his government was ousted because of a foreign conspiracy. Khan is currently being held in a prison near Islamabad. India's Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar, India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant, Delhi's Lieutenant Governor Vinay Kumar Saxena and Indian Urban Development Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, along with G20 delegates, took part in a plantation drive held in India's capital, New Delhi, on Monday. The drive aims to promote India's agenda of lifestyle for environment and combating climate change. Minister Jaishankar spoke about India's stand on climate change.
The Green Development Pact, the message of women-led development, the support for digital public infrastructure, the life mission, the sustainable lifestyle for environment. At the end of it all, there was a very strong sustainability, green, global South image that came out of the G20. This G20, we would like it certainly to be remembered as a green G20, as a sustainable G20, in many ways as a G20 of the future.
In more news from India, an e-auction event displaying a splendid array of gifts and mementos received by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is being conducted by the country's Culture Ministry. This is the fifth round of the e-auction. A total of 912 items are up for auction and will conclude on the 31st of October. While speaking on the ongoing PM Mementos e-auction, Indian Minister of State for Culture Meenakshi Lekhi said that the money collected from the auction will go towards the Namami Gange project.
प्रधानमंत्री जी जब प्रधानमंत्री बने तो उनको जो भी उपहार दिए जाते हैं उसको ऑक्शन करके जो पैसा आता है उस पैसे का इस्तेमाल नमामि गंगे प्रोजेक्ट की तरफ जाता है। तो उसी सिलसिले में 31 अक्टूबर तक का समय है और 2 अक्टूबर से शुरू हुई थी। काफ़ी समय निकल चुका है, बहुत छोटा सा लास्ट लेग बची है।
And Jessica Thareja spoke to the Deputy High Commissioner of South Africa to India, who applauded the induction of the African Union in the G20 and said that it endorses India's rising global stature. Take a listen.
We have with us the Deputy High Commissioner of South Africa to India, Mr. Cedric Crowley. Thank you for speaking to DD India. The success of G20 can be seen. We've had the Delhi Declaration, which was a success as well, catering to all kinds of conversation around what the G20 summit could achieve, especially talking about the induction of the African Union. How did you look at it?
And I think the Indian G20 presidency on all levels was a great success, and we congratulate India on the fantastic achievement and the real and concrete deliverables that they were able to put forward, especially the induction of Africa as a permanent member. We have been asking and calling for Africa to get greater voice in multilateral institutions, the G20 being an important one, and possibly one of the younger ones. And yet it has been able to induct Africa as a permanent member. We are still working on IMF and World Bank reforms of the Security Council, so that we can reflect the reality.
How important are these groupings? We talk about the G20, we talk about the BRICS. We have various such multilateral initiatives, which are now becoming the emerging voice of the Global South, and at least talking about initiatives that affect the developing nations and how they need resources to continue with the initiatives that have been put forth. Do you think that's gaining momentum now?
I think so. If we look at the institutional capacity that has been developed over time through relatively young organizations like BRICS and G20, we've seen the development bank of BRICS. That is something concrete. It is something that delivers on the ground. If we look at the action plan of the G20 on SDGs that was developed here, something concrete, something deliverable. Equally on the issue of debt and debt sustainability, decisions that are taken in the G20, it's easy to go and implement in the multilateral organizations like IMF and World Bank, because the key decision makers are around the same table.
Former Indian cricketer Bishan Singh Bedi has died at the age of 77. He made his debut against West Indies in 1966 and played his last test against England at the Oval in 1979. The cricketing world mourns the passing of this legendary cricketer.
Indian cricket legend Bishan Singh Bedi has died aged 77 after a prolonged illness. He was battling age-related illnesses and had undergone a few surgeries in recent years. Bedi, regarded as one of the world's finest ever spin bowlers, captained India in 22 of his 67 tests and took 266 wickets. He made his debut against West Indies in 1966 and played his last test against England at the Oval in 1979. Bedi also played English county cricket for Northamptonshire and finished his career with 1,560 first-class wickets, the highest by any Indian bowler. Bedi was an integral part of a famed quartet of India's world-beating spin bowlers in the 1960s and 70s, which included Irapalli Prasanna, Bhagwat Chandrasekhar and Srinivas Venkataraghavan. The cricketing world mourns his death as a huge loss for cricket. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed grief over the demise of Indian legend. He posted on X, and I quote him, "Deeply saddened by the passing of noted cricketer Shri Bishan Singh Bedi ji. His passion for the sport was unwavering, and his exemplary bowling performances led India to numerous memorable victories. He will continue to inspire future generations of cricketers. Condolences to his family and admirers. Om Shanti." Indian Sports Minister Anurag Thakur posted on X, "Deeply saddened to hear about the passing of legendary India spinner Bishan Singh Bedi."
भारतीय टीम के पूर्व कप्तान, जिन्होंने देश के लिए बहुत लंबा समय खेला भी, प्रतिनिधित्व किया, बिशन जी आज हम सब के बीच में नहीं रहे। बहुत दुखद समाचार है। इस दुख की घड़ी में हम उनके परिवार के साथ हैं।
India's Home Minister says he is deeply saddened by the demise of the legendary spinner and former captain of the Indian cricket team Bishan Singh Bedi ji. Bedi ji will live in our memories not only through his contribution to the cricketing world, but also as the master of crafty bowling who could weave magic on the pitch. My heartfelt condolences to his family members and his fans in this hour of grief. Born in Amritsar in India's Punjab state, Bedi began playing cricket at school. When he turned 20, he became the 113th cricketer to represent India in tests. Bedi was by far India's most successful left-arm spinner until he was surpassed by Ravindra Jadeja earlier this year during the ICC World Test Championship final against Australia.
Take a look at some other stories making news in India. Indian Home Minister Amit Shah launched the logo, website and brochure of the National Cooperative for Exports Limited and distributed the membership certificates to its members. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal also took part in the event. Indian Panorama, the flagship component of the International Film Festival of India, has announced the selection of 25 feature films and 20 non-feature films. The selected films will be showcased at the 54th IFFI to be held from 20th to 28th November in Goa. Indian Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan visited the birthplace of freedom fighter Veer Surendra Sai and took part in the Meri Mati Mera Desh campaign to collect sacred soil from Sambalpur's Khinda village in the Indian state of Odisha. The overall air quality in the Indian capital, New Delhi, on Monday was recorded in a very poor category with a thick blanket of smoke visible in the skies. The Delhi government decided to use dust suppressant powder to prevent dust pollution in the city. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is on a two-day visit to Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. He attended a musical evening presented by the army personnel at the Meghna Stadium in Tezpur, Assam. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Afghanistan chases 283 runs against Pakistan in a Cricket World Cup match. India sweeps the podium in the men's high jump T63 category at the Asian Para Games. And India celebrates Durga Puja.
अब क्या देख रहे हो पापा? तुम कहते हो ना कि स्टॉक मार्केट में बहुत सोच समझकर इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए। बस थोड़ा सा ज्ञान ले रहा हूँ। किससे? हर एक स्टॉक्स एक्सपर्ट है, मस्त एजुकेशनल वीडियोस बनाता है और अच्छी इन्वेस्टमेंट की टिप्स भी देता है।
पापा, इन वीडियोस पे ना जाएं। अपना रिसर्च खुद करें या सेबी रजिस्टर्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट एडवाइजर से संपर्क करें। एजुकेशन के नाम पर कुछ इन्फ्लुएंसर्स अक्सर इन्वेस्टर को मिसगाइड करते हैं। नुकसान आपका होगा।
सोचकर समझकर इन्वेस्ट कर।
तुम्हें पता है इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए कि इन्वेस्टर प्रोटेक्शन फंड होता है IPF, लेकिन अगर तुम्हारा ट्रेड एक्सचेंज पर एग्जीक्यूट नहीं हुआ या फिर कोई गारंटीड रिटर्न्स वाली स्कीम है तो ये IPF आपकी मदद नहीं कर सकता है।
और अगर आपका ब्रोकर ही डिफॉल्टर बन जाए तो
फिर IPF आपको कॉम्पेंसेशन दिला सकता है।
कहाँ से सीखा?
NSE की साइट पर।
सोचकर समझकर इन्वेस्ट कर।
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. At least 17 people were killed and scores injured in a railway accident when a cargo train rammed into a passenger train at the Bhairab station in Dhaka, Bangladesh. The accident occurred when the cargo train hit the rear of the Dhaka-bound Egaro Shindur Godhuli Express, which was coming from Kishoreganj. The passenger train was standing on the outer tracks on its way to the capital city from the port city of Chattogram. Rescuers from police, fire service and rapid action battalion pulled out bodies from inside the wreckage of two badly mangled compartments. Russian and Ukrainian militaries continue to exchange fire, hitting each other's military targets. The Ukrainian military published a drone footage showing armored vehicles exploding near Avdiivka as Russian troops are set to intensify pressure on the frontline town. Ukraine shot down 14 attack drones at its south and east region. Air defenses brought down 9 Iranian-made Shahid drones over the southern region of Odessa. Russian soldiers also blocked Ukrainian forces trying to cross the Dnieper River in Kherson. And now take a look at some more stories making news around the world. Nigeria's commercial capital hosted the 4th edition of the Door of Return Festival, a symbolic annual event where the African diaspora were received through the same route that their forefathers were shipped as slaves. Spain seized gold artifacts valued at $63.6 million stolen from Ukraine after thieves were caught trying to sell them in Madrid. 3 Spaniards and 2 Ukrainians were arrested after an investigation that began when one of their pieces was sold in 2021 in Madrid. The Indonesian island of Bali, one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world, has declared a state of emergency after suffering from forest fires as well as prolonged drought and peatland. Indonesia's weather agency warned earlier of a severe dry season from El Niño's impact. Climate activists dressed as Pinocchio held a sit-in on Monday to criticize the Italian government's lack of action on climate change. The protesters mounted a large papier-mâché Pinocchio puppet sitting on 2 barrels of oil while holding a burning earth in his hand in front of the entrance of the Ministry of Transport's headquarters. And now to all the news from the world of sport. On to the 4th Asian Para Games in Hangzhou, China. India's Prachi Yadav opened India's medal tally, winning the silver medal in canoeing in the women's VL2 category. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India congratulated Prachi on a silver medal win. The Prime Minister posted on the social media platform X, and I quote, "Prachi Yadav etches her name in the history of Indian sports by securing the first medal at the Asian Para Games. Congratulations to Prachi on winning the remarkable silver medal win in the para canoeing women's VL2 final. Her incredible performance has made the entire nation proud," unquote. India sweeps the podium in the men's high jump T63 category. Shailesh Kumar won the gold medal with a games record of a 1.83-meter jump, bagging India's first goal in the 4th Asian Para Games. Paralympics gold medalist Mariyappan Thangavelu with a jump of 1.8 meters won the silver, and Ram Singh Padiyar 1.78 meters the bronze in the 3-way contest. In the men's club throw F51 category, India clinched all 3 medals which were there for the taking. Pranav Surma won the gold in the men's club throw F51 category. Dharambir settled for silver, while Amit Saroha bagged the bronze. India celebrates Durga Puja on Monday, a Hindu festival that marks the victory of goddess Durga over Mahishasura. The festival, which originated in the eastern Indian state of West Bengal, has gained popularity across the country. The city of Patna in the state of Bihar has a special tableau modeled on the theme of Chandrayaan 3. The city has more than 1,200 Durga Puja tableaux. Thousands of devotees gathered at various tableaux on the occasion of Navaratri, the 9th day of the 10-day festivities. The 10th day is celebrated as Dashera, when an effigy of Ravan is burnt as a symbol of victory of good over evil. Mahanavami is also celebrated in Nepal. People in large numbers perform a special worship to goddess Durga. They waited in long queues to offer prayers to the goddess at all Shakti shrines in the Kathmandu Valley. The Taliju temple, located at Hanuman Dhoka in Kathmandu, is open for devotees to pay homage on Maha Navami. The devotees also worship their vehicles on this special occasion. Right, we'll also get you the latest from the Cricket World Cup match, where Afghanistan also plays Pakistan. But in the meantime, we'll stay on these visuals of the Durga Puja festivities in Nepal. Remember, it's a big occasion in both India and Nepal. Monday is Durga Puja and is celebrated as Mahanavami also in Nepal. Devotees can be seen thronging the Shakti shrines in the Kathmandu Valley. Right, so we'll get you some more visuals of the Durga Puja festivities in Kolkata, the capital of the eastern Indian state of West Bengal. Remember, Monday is Durga Puja, a Hindu festival that marks the victory of goddess Durga over Mahishasura. The festival, which originated in the eastern Indian state of West Bengal, has gained popularity across the country.
এই নৈবেদ্যের সঙ্গেই বাল্যভোগও নিবেদিত হয় দেবীর তার পূজার পর তার পরিবারের পূজার
The city of Patna also has a special tableau modeled on the theme of Chandrayaan 3. The city has more than 1,200 Durga Puja tableau.
দেবীর উদ্দেশ্যে অর্ঘ্যটি 108 দুর্বা সহ বিশেষ আর্ঘ্যের সময় স্থাপিত
শুভম গৃহাণাচমনীয়ং ত্বং মায়া ভক্ত্যা নিবেদিতং নৈব চ ময়া নিবেদিতান গন্ধান প্রতিগৃহ্য বিলিন্দন পুষ্পমাল্যায় নমঃ তস্मै চন্দন পুষ্পমাল্যায় নমঃ
এই নৈবেদ্যের সঙ্গেই বাল্যভোগও নিবেদিত হয় দেবীর তার পূজার পর তার পরিবারের পূজার আজ্ঞা প্রার্থনা করে দেব
পাদ্যম বঙ্গতস্मै পাদ্যায় নমঃ ওম দুর্গাयै নমঃ
দেবীর উদ্দেশ্যে অর্ঘ্যটি
108
দুর্বা সহ বিশেষ আর্ঘ্যের সময় স্থাপিত
শুভম গৃহাণাচমনীয়ং ত্বং মায়া ভক্ত্যা নিবেদিতং নৈব চ ময়া নিবেদিতান গন্ধান প্রতিগৃহ্য বিলিন্দন পুষ্পমাল্যায় নমঃ তস্मै চন্দন পুষ্পমাল্যায় নমঃ
এই নৈবেদ্যের সঙ্গেই বাল্যভোগও নিবেদিত হয় দেবীর তার পূজার পর তার পরিবারের পূজার আজ্ঞা প্রার্থনা করে
Right, so you're watching the Durga Puja festivities taking place in Kolkata, the capital of the eastern Indian state of West Bengal. Monday is Durga Puja festivities across India. We've seen a similar tableau in other states of India as well, including Bihar, where at least one tableau in the city of Patna featured a special tableau modeled on the theme of Chandrayaan 3, India's successful moon mission. Remember, the 10th day is celebrated as Dashera, that's tomorrow, Tuesday, across India, when an effigy of Ravan is burnt as a symbol of victory of good over evil. And before we close, the news just coming in, Afghanistan has beaten Pakistan by 8 wickets. Earlier, Pakistan set a target of 283 runs against Afghanistan in the ICC World Cup match in Chennai. Pakistan captain Babar Azam top scored with 74 runs, while Imamul Haq and Shadab Khan, Iftikhar Ahmed made valuable contributions. For Afghanistan, Noor Ahmed took 3 wickets. Earlier, Pakistan won the toss and opted to bat. Pakistani openers Imamul Haq and Abdullah Shafiq had a good start, but pacer Azmatullah Omarzai provided Afghanistan with the first breakthrough as he dismissed Imam-ul Haq. Till last reports came in, Afghanistan were assured of a win against Pakistan. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.